Hey everybody, welcome to Dad's Den of Pop Culture and a movie review today. We're going to take a look at one of the more important and substantial James Bond imitators of the 1960s. A film that ingeniously blended the spy genre with the teenage beach movie genre. I am, of course, talking about Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine from 1965, directed by Norman Taurog, youngest winner of the Academy Award ever when he won it in 1931 for a film called Skippy. Went on to do a bunch of Elvis movies. We chatted about him in, I think, my Blue Hawaii review that I did. A lot of Jerry Lewis movies. And here he is working with comedy legends Frankie Avalon and Dwayne Hickman. Okay, I know I'm being a little bit of a wise ass here, but honestly, it's a fun movie. It's not a great movie, but it's a good summer movie. So let's jump in to Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine. It starts with the credits. They are animated by Art Clokey, the guy who created Gumby and Pokey. So you got a little claymation work there. Very nice. The movie actually gets started with sort of the frame concept. We're actually going to be seeing something that happens towards the end of the film to open it up. We get this breakneck sort of driving through San Francisco, and specifically the winding Lombard Street, which you notice that's very straight. That's because it moves so fast I couldn't grab a still image that wasn't blurry. We go down some hills, and then we kind of crash into a tunnel, or we seemingly crash into a tunnel. That's how we open things. And then we move on to San Francisco the day after tomorrow. Okay. This is 1960s San Francisco. This is peak San Francisco, which kind of sad to say that at this point, but I think it's kind of true. One of the secrets of a lower budget film, and that's primarily what American International did, was stock footage and also outdoor shots, so you didn't have to worry a lot about lighting. We get a lot of that, both those things, in this film. And in fact, we get about solid 2 minutes of it. And then finally, we spot one of our stars, Susan Hart. We're not going to talk about who she's playing just yet. We're going to get to that. Walking across a street. And then it goes back to some stock footage. And in fact, we see sort of stock footage and her walking, and stock footage and her walking. And this seems like backlot stuff. And then finally, this guy in his car roars around this corner and runs right into her. And the car stops and gets damaged, and she doesn't. So I have this weird feeling that there's something strange about this particular girl. It's followed by her accidentally knocking over a couple of robbers running out of this building. They shoot at her, they open fire, point blank range, does not seem to affect her at all. And then she finally stops in front of a restaurant. Now we look inside and we find our hero, Craig Gamble, played by Frankie Avalon, and his girlfriend, Louise, who's played this, and this is just a little cameo by Deborah Wally. She was in one of the Gidget movies. I think Gidget Goes Hawaiian. He's treating her to a cheese sandwich. He is the last of the big spenders. Well, Louise is not impressed. She kind of storms out, actually clubs him over the head with a tray. Once she leaves, Susan Hart here enters, and she drinks his milk. And that's not some kind of weird euphemism. She actually drinks his milk for seemingly no reason other than we get the milk spouting out of the bullet holes bit that you got in a lot of cartoons. It's, not done in a real subtle way here. And unfortunately, that's where a fair amount of the comedy in this one lands. The timing's a little off. It feels a little wedged in. Not all of it, but some of it, doesn't work quite as well as it probably could. Well, she then proceeds to eat his sandwich. And, she affects this sort of Southern Belle kind of accent and starts kind of, flirting with him. And at that point, he decides that even though she stole his lunch, maybe she's not that bad after all. But it turns out that she's actually looking not for Craig Gamble, but for Todd Armstrong. Now, in terms of American International Pictures, this is a little bit inside baseball. Prior to this film, Avalon and Hickman starred in a movie called Ski Party. And in that movie, Avalon played a character called Todd Armstrong. Hickman played a character called Craig Gamble. Same names in this movie, switched them around, not really the same characters. I don't know if they were going for a callback on that or not, or if it's just a matter of she's got the wrong guy, because that's important to the plot. Now, at this point in the film, got a lot of stock footage, a lot of walking. We've gotten a couple, little sight gags. And maybe you're starting to think, is it really worth it? Well, I will keep this. I want you to keep this in mind. At one point, eventually, Susan Hart's going to be in a gold bikini, and Vincent Price is going to show up. So hang in there. Things are going to get better. Well, she works her feminine wiles on Craig, who lets her in on the fact rather quickly that he is part of Secret Intelligence Command, SIC, also known as SIC. Not really good at keeping a secret. They kiss, and the kiss really does it. He's hooked. So at her suggestion, they head back to his place. And once they're there, we do finally get to see that gold bikini. This movie ain't Shakespeare, but the film does have its good points. And also, it was designed for teenagers and maybe, really young adults. They knew their audience, and they do give that audience what they probably would want. Well, Craig actually gets a little bit square here, because you can't be dressed like that alone with me in my apartment. Puts her coat back on her, kind of backwards, actually. Trying to get her out of there. She actually throws herself at him. And by that, I mean like a flying tackle. They roll around on the floor, and not in the fun way. And at this point, we see that all of this is being watched from some kind of a laboratory. And the watcher is Igor, the bumbling idiot assistant of Dr. Goldfoot. We had to wait almost 10 minutes, but Vincent Price is finally here in his gold slippers, hence the name Dr. Goldfoot. We get the obligatory scene of the evil mad scientist berating the help, Skeletor style, you get it. Igor has sent Diane, and that is the name of this fembot. Yeah, she's actually a robot, to the wrong guy. Craig Gamble does not have a penny to his name. Why create such a lovely thing and send her to him? It's a waste of her ammunition, as he says. So just as Craig kind of decides to give in to Diane, brave man that he is, she gets a, wireless message from Goldfoot. He refers to her as number 11 and tells her she has the wrong guy and to return to base. She storms off, now trading the Southern accent for an equally fake French accent, and Craig ends up trapped in the wall behind his Murphy bed. I really long for a return to the days of subtle comedy. Witness now Todd Armstrong, played by Dwayne Hickman, well known from The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, the millionaire that Diane was supposed to target in the first place. He's out for a drive, enjoying a rear projection of San Francisco. Now, the idea is that number 11, Diane, is supposed to marry this guy so Goldfoot can get a hold of his fortune. And now, and I'm still not sure why I'm doing this, given what this movie is, we're putting up the spoiler sign. So, Goldfoot is apparently planning to do this with a whole lot of different millionaires. He has Igor fetch in numbers 1 through 9 so they can watch Diane at work and learn. Now, among these fembots are Deanna Lund, who would go on to star in Irwin Allen's Land of the Giants, and Chena Lee, Playboy's Playmate of the Month for August of 1964. Yeah, Playboy Playmates in teenage movies. The 50s and 60s might not be what you think they are, if that kind of surprises you. Well, Goldfoot uses this remote control device to send Todd's car into reverse, directing him through the streets backwards, and then he stations Diane in a position to attract his attention, as though she's checking a flat tire. And by golly, it actually works. She runs over to Todd after he crashes his car into a light pole. Of course, he didn't really need to crash it since Dr. Goldfoot was in control. But at any rate, she runs over there to see, if he's okay. She mentions that she's completely flat, It's an easy joke, but this is a movie for easy jokes. It's a little bit funny, actually. And so she ends up, working pretty fast. He is instantly in love. And we get a bit here with this police officer, because he ran his car backwards into a light pole. This movie is full of character actors from 60s TV. So if you're a big fan of 60s TV, you're going to see a whole lot of people that you know. Well, Dr. Goldfoot is a very bad man. Not only does he plan to steal this money from millionaires, he also has a way to get rid of any rivals they might have. It involves fake opera glasses that stab you in the eyes with poisoned blades. So all you dungeon masters out there, take note. That's a good one. Vincent Price is really fun in this role, as he always is in pretty much everything. He's over the top, but in a good way, in the way you have to be in a movie like this. Now, the Fembots are all given their targets and instructions and sent off to do their work. And then, of course, because this movie is what it is, a dance party breaks out. I mean, it just gives you everything you'd want in this kind of a film. Now, back at work for Sick, Craig is on the phone to information trying to find a woman named Diane somewhere in the Bay Area. Obviously, that doesn't help much. He is called into his uncle's office. This is where we find out that the way he got a job for Secret Intelligence Command is because his uncle is in charge of the San Francisco office. So Uncle Donald here, by the way, is played by Fred Clark. So Craig gets chewed out. It's the basic stuff. There is some physical comedy in this part. Well, that night, at a club called the Condor, we see Sam and the 8 Men playing a set. Now, this is a real band from the time period. You got a go-go dancer. It's actually pretty fun. And apparently the entire movie was going to be a very campy musical. And then at the last minute, they sort of changed their mind on that one. Maybe they should have gone with the campy musical. Well, obviously, Todd and Diane are there. Dr. Goldfoot and Igor are there as well, observing. Now, Todd is doing really well with Diane. Really surprising, I know, since he's actually being lured into a trap. And she's getting him really, really drunk. He suggests they go back to her place. And she tells him he probably wouldn't like it, wouldn't find it very comfortable, since she is the laboratory assistant to a mad scientist. Now, he doesn't quite believe her in this, although, look, honesty is the foundation of a good relationship. So, she decides to point out the mad scientist in question because he's actually, in this club. But when she does, Dr. Goldfoot hits a button on his little remote control and she freezes and starts sputtering, etc. Todd is confused, but he suggests that they go back to his place instead. Oh, but Diane tells him that she couldn't possibly go back to his place unless they were married because she is a good girl. Well, he's hesitant, but then one more drink and check, please. Off they go. So essentially at this point, Dr. Goldfoot's plan has worked. His mechanical fembot is going to marry the millionaire. And the scene ends with a nice little bit of physical comedy and a couple nice line reads from Vincent Price. Again, he's easily the best, comic actor in this movie. He's got the timing, etc. Well, the next morning, Craig comes across a copy of Life magazine announcing the marriage of Diane and Todd. And he's shocked. How could she do this to him? They meant so much to each other. Well, back at Goldfoot's lab, he's sending 3 more fembots out to snag millionaires. And it gets a little weird at the end of the scene with number 12 rolling off the assembly line and Igor hit some wrong buttons or something like that. You got to see it to really appreciate it. Back at Todd's penthouse, he's pouting because Diane wasn't very forthcoming on their wedding night. Well, she explains that first of all, her batteries were low. And, that happens sometimes. But also, she didn't feel they were really, really married because she hadn't gotten her gift from him yet. And that gift turns out to be him signing over all of his stocks and bonds to her. Well, back to Craig. He's down in the dumps. He's terrible at his job. He lost Diane. And then he spots her on the street. She's out shopping. And he accosts her. And now she has a British accent, sort of. And she pretends not to know him. And Craig is now confused. That's going to happen a lot in this movie, including, I think, to the audience. Well, Dr. Goldfoot comes along just as she clobbers Craig on the sidewalk. They end up in this tug of war over her, and Diane decides to give Craig a hand. Yeah, I went there. Well, Craig faints, which leaves Goldfinger to deal with Diane single-handed. I'm really on form today. Well, in his car, Goldfoot reviews her haul. Very impressive. He assures her that he has spare hands back at the vault, not to worry, but she forgot the power of attorney. She's supposed to have Todd sign a power of attorney over to her so that she can then give everything he owns to Dr. Goldfoot. And this oversight has to be punished. She's going to go to the chair when they get back to the lab. I don't know what that means yet, but we will find out. Craig's uncle is also not having a great time. First, he's on the phone with Craig, who's starting to put things together about Diane. Of course, Uncle Donald doesn't really believe him. And then with Inspector Abernathy from Washington, D.C., who's coming out to inspect things. Now, one of the things that marks a lower budget picture, no interesting camera angles. Time was often short on these films. They had to keep it basic. It often looks like an old TV show with a wider screen. And you will find that in this era with a lot of the Disney movies that were made. They were sort of a step above TV, but they weren't quite the cinematic experience, but they were fun, light comedy movies. You could usually go to it with your family. In this case, I mean, kids could probably watch this. It wouldn't be too amazingly shocking to them in 1965, but that's just something to keep in mind when you're watching this. Doesn't have like this amazing cinematography in it or anything. Well, the next thing we see is Frankie Avalon doing his best Don Knotts impression. Apparently, Craig has figured out that he needs to go to Goldfoot Memorial Park. It's a cemetery, spare parts. And honestly, Avalon does not do a bad job through here. Obviously, Knotts would have, killed it. He would have been better. And it occurs to me, Don Knotts actually would have been great in this movie. This could have been a great Don Knotts picture. Don Knotts and Vincent Price. Oh my goodness, we were really cheated on that one. So how does he figure out that he needs to go here? I don't know. He must have heard the name Goldfoot or something like that. It almost feels like there's just a chunk of film missing. Now, this movie is an hour and a half long, so there really shouldn't have been a chunk of film missing, but, it is what it is. Well, he manages to stumble into Goldfoot's lair, which is like, underground. And actually, it's a pretty good bit how he gets down there, and there's a bit with this guy on not a stretcher, but whatever the stretchers with the wheels, and I'm sure there's a word for him. Now, like any decent, brave American boy, Craig decides to investigate as soon as he sees a bunch of girls in gold bikinis. He sees the new number 12 rolling off the assembly line, so, these are robots. He also sees Dr. Goldfoot sending girls out to marry millionaires, so basically, he stumbled onto the entire plot of the film. It's very, very convenient. And he also sees Diane being punished in the chair, which is sort of like an electric chair. I guess maybe it would overload her circuits or something like that, since she's not actually, a person. Robot, sort of Frankenstein, it's a little hazy. Well, Craig sneaks away, and he hides under a sheet, which almost lands him in the embalming room, because this is, obviously underneath the funeral parlor. While Goldfoot gives Diane a hand. I know I keep doing that, but still he manages to escape, and he brings this wild tale to his Uncle Donald while Inspector Abernathy is inspecting the place. This is bad timing. Now, here's the weird part. Inspector Abernathy is Igor. So first you're going, what, does he just look like Igor? Maybe this plays into it. There's mistaken identity. No, it seems like he really is Igor, because when their backs are turned, he climbs out the window and disappears. Okay, so we're setting something up, right? No, we will never see this addressed again in the film. So when there's parts that seem like they're missing, there's parts that don't need to be there and are not necessarily all that funny. So the movie's a little bit of a mess. Well, Craig decides to go confront Todd Armstrong in his apartment, his penthouse. And he reveals to Todd that he is in fact married to a robot. I'm sorry to say this, but Dwayne Hickman has a really terrible spit take at this point. I am sort of an aficionado of spit takes. You need to get a fine mist. It's better if you aim it at somebody's face. Kids, just so you know, don't aim it at somebody's face if they're liable to punch you in real life. But this was just sort of a bunch of water spills out of his mouth. Not very good there. But needless to say, Todd does not believe him. So Craig takes Diane's hand out of a bag, has the wedding ring on her finger, and all of a sudden, Todd realizes that he's telling the truth. Of course, there's also some drinking that happens before then, but he now joins Team Craig. It's time to teach this Dr. Goldfoot guy a lesson. And that is when Diane shows up to the apartment. Now, there are some decent bits in this scene. They have this cool rotating bar. So Craig gets on the bar and he rotates into the wall and he ends up spying on them. You know, it's the eyes through the holes in a painting, but the painting is like one of those paintings of little kids with the giant eyes that were big in the 60s. I found that kind of amusing. Then they go to the bedroom scene, just Todd and Diane, and it's actually pretty decent as well. Todd immediately has trouble resisting in the face of that negligee. And I'll be honest with you, when they didn't have Susan Hart doing this kind of bad accent of some sort, she's really pretty good in this movie. She does a nice job. When she mentions the paper that he needs to sign, he tries to yell for Craig, but is stifled by a kiss. And he's like, what's the use? He gives in. He signs the power of attorney over to her. Dude is only human. And then, under orders from Goldfoot, she hightails it back to his lab. And she even walks through a wall in the process. Now, when I say walks through a wall, I mean she sort of phases through a wall. Well, how the heck does she do that? Look, I have a feeling the script called for her to actually walk through a wall, like physically crash, bang, probably a cutout shape of her. But we don't get that. And that could have been a budget issue. I just think that's what they intended in the script to be done, and they didn't have the money for it. And instead of just having her open the door, they decided she can become immaterial like the Vision. Well, Todd is once again confused. We get another bit then in the lab with Goldfoot and Igor, kind of wedged in there, but it's like this attaché case, and when you open it, this arm reaches out with a boxing glove, punches Vincent Price in the face several times, punches Igor. It actually was kind of funny. The timing was good on that one. And Vincent Price is just great. Todd ends up waking up after their night of drinking. He discovers he left Craig closed up in the bar all night. So now these two hungover geniuses have to stop the diabolical Dr. Goldfoot. But Todd tells him, hey, I actually signed your name to the power of attorney. It's actually no good. He tricked him. All right, good for him. Well, not so good for Diane, because for that mistake, Goldfoot has her scrubbing the floors, kind of like Cinderella. Now, you might think at some point she was going to rebel against him. That would kind of make sense. Yeah, no. There's a lot of places in here where amateur that I am, I feel I could have maybe written a better movie. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, Craig and Todd dash back to Uncle Donald's office, kind of knock him out of a window. He refuses to listen to them. I mean, knocking people out of windows will do that. While Goldfoot is back counting his money, or really Todd's money. They sold all the stocks and securities. There's some bits here with Igor trying to get a hold of some of the money. It's actually pretty good. And strangely enough, it made me think, Vincent Price might have actually made a good Bond villain, because obviously he could play serious roles as well as funny roles. And I think he had the charisma and the bearing in order to do something like that. Well, Todd and Craig drive back out to the cemetery, and they drop into the lair. And I mean that literally. There's a trap door. They attempt to run, but they're stopped at every turn. I think they're really kind of going for a Martin Lewis thing here, with Avalon in the Lewis role. Doesn't quite get there. That's one of the things about movies like this. When you're doing a comedy, but you don't have, comedians in it. And Vincent Price is kind of a comedian. I think he was a naturally funny guy. But when you don't have a Jerry Lewis in a movie, and I'll be completely honest, I'm not a Jerry Lewis fan for the most part, but the guy knew his stuff. He had a big following. He did very well. When you're doing a movie with a guy like that, he can throw in ideas of his own, help make a scene better. When you're dealing with people who are not really comedians, they can't really do that. And so I think when we watch a lot of movies like a Jerry Lewis or the Marx Brothers or what have you, there is an element of the movie being made better on the spot with the help of the comedic actors. And I think it hurts films that don't have that going for them. Well, Goldfoot gives them this tour, shows them the Bikini Machine that creates the fembots, tells them how he picked out his targets, the computers he uses to program his ladies, and then Diane is there, of course. She shows up. They go to this dinner. The boys are worried about being poisoned again. It has a Martin Lewis feel to it. They find out that Diane has been reprogrammed. She only now speaks and understands Japanese, so Todd can't really get, very far with her here. I mean, he didn't get that far when she spoke English either, but a lot of sight gags in this part. There's a girl being chased around by a goon, which kind of reminded me of like a Monkees movie or a Monkees television episode. Oh, Monkees wasn't out yet in 65, so maybe I should say the Monkees reminds me of Dr. Goldfoot. They continue the tour. So the dinner's kind of pointless. Again, I thought, maybe they're going to do the thing where Diane, despite her programming, is somehow going to fall in love with Todd. That's where they're rolling. Nothing happens really at dinner other than just a bunch of sight gags. Well, so they continue the tour. We see Goldfoot's illustrious ancestors. We see that woman, his first attempt at making a fembot. She has like 3 eyes. And I'm thinking that's probably some painting that, was like from some hip San Francisco place that they decided to use. And they finally make it to the torture chamber. And in the torture chamber, they meet somebody very special in the pillory. And then this guy shows up locked in a closet. So we get some Beach Movie cameos, which actually I do dig that kind of thing. Bob and Bing did it all the time in their movies, so why not? Well, Todd is imprisoned, and Goldfoot demands that power of attorney. Igor attempts to torture Todd. He's not very good at it. In fact, he ends up hanging from a chain by his foot. Igor's not awesome in this film, honestly. Doesn't really have strong comic timing. There's a few bits that he's okay in. Played by Jack Mulaney, I should mention. A scene like that got me thinking that, like, if you had somebody, I don't know, like a Jerry Van Dyke in that role, it might have worked a little bit better. Again, you had folks who were not like really, really comic actors in the thing. And I think it hurts it in a few places. Well, finally, Goldfoot decides to use the ultimate persuader, the pit, and the pendulum, which, of course, Vincent Price had some experience with. And in fact, this is the set from the Pit and Pendulum movie that he did. Well, Craig manages to escape this, prison cell that they've locked him into with the help of Igor being stupid. And he saves Todd in the nick of time. He opens the door, knocks Dr. Goldfoot into the pit. We now get a chase, starting with girls in gold bikinis with lasers. And then we get Vincent Price with lasers. Who really needs Star Wars at this point? And then a car chase. I would say this is a finale, but the chase takes up a big chunk of the end of the movie. We start off with Todd and Craig in a car, Goldfoot and Igor on a motorcycle with a sidecar through the streets of San Francisco. The car has gadgets, kind of a James Bond thing, which backfire on these two. Avalon actually does kind of look like Jerry Lewis in this scene. We get some nice views, again, of peak 1960s San Francisco as they roll through the town. Again, it is a long chase. There are some car changes. Dr. Goldfoot has that little remote control, and he can make the car blow up when he presses the button. Now it's sort of a cartoon blowing up because you can see the two of them are not injured, but it also, well, then why doesn't he just use that every time they get into a different car? Well, he just doesn't. We get the winding Lombard Street once again, which is what we saw at the beginning of it. After that seeming crash, it's actually them pulling the car out of the way. Goldfoot and Igor go into this tunnel, and they end up crashing into a trolley. So they're using the city to good effect, right? But to me, you got a slapstick comedy. You have the Diane character who's been, pretty much in most of the movie at this point and kind of disappears at this point. What if instead of this car chase, which really kind of goes on too long, and believe me, we're not done with it yet. To me, first of all, you got a bunch of girls in bikinis. What about a pie fight? Simple guy that I am, I think that would have probably pleased, well, at least half of the young audience that was in the theater at that point. But to me also, why not have the thing where Diane sort of like betrays Dr. Goldfoot, and she helps them to escape or to do whatever, or to, you know, find the button that will, I don't know, self-destruct the other fembots, something like that, or turn all the fembots against Dr. Goldfoot. You could have probably saved a lot of money because, again, they put a lot into the car chase, but it seems like that would have fit better, and it uses the Diane character. But instead, Diane just sort of disappears for a while, and we get this car chase. So, car chase is over, right? They crashed into a trolley. Oh, no, sir. After the crash, it does continue. They reuse the car exploding gag again. So that tells me you're kind of short on material at this point. And again, 90-minute movie. They could have probably trimmed it. It turns into a trolley chase, then a mini bike versus trolley chase on the Golden Gate Bridge. I have a feeling that the San Francisco Tourist Bureau paid them a little money or helped fund this movie because they do a lot in San Francisco. And then we got a runaway boat on a trailer going downhill and the trolley. And if you're going to do the car chase bit or the whole chase bit, pacing's important, getting a rhythm down because you're changing from one thing to another. There's kind of a way to do that I think would work a little bit better than what they ended up doing here. Eventually, Igor drops a grenade in the trolley and it explodes. Okay, so the chase is over. Movie's not really over yet. Hold on. The boys end up somehow blown into the water and they swim away. And we don't know at this point what's happened to Dr. Goldfoot and Igor. Well, the boys swim to shore and they end up in a missile testing range. And Goldfoot and Igor show up in a Jeep driving straight at them. And so the boys kind of goad them into going after them fast. And then they step out of the way and they drive off a cliff, which kind of is, poetic when you consider how the movie of this, how it kind of ends. And then there's a missile strike and it seems to wipe Goldfoot and Igor off the map. So Todd and Craig decide to unwind from this really weird week with a trip to Paris. And on the airplane, who do they find? Uncle Donald. And Diane is there now with an Austrian accent. Well, again, sorta. And we end with ominous laughter coming from the cockpit. Dr. Goldfoot will return in Avengers Doomsday. No, he will return in Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs, which, if I'm honest, kind of makes this one feel like high art. So to me, Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine, it does have some funny bits in it. I mean, it's a certain kind of funny that not everybody might enjoy, but it does have some funny bits in it. There is some genuine talent behind the camera, and there is some genuine talent in the form of Vincent Price. Now, I think for Hickman and Avalon, they're trying to kind of put them again into sort of a Martin and Lewis thing, maybe a Bing and Bob thing. They're not really well cut out for that. So there's kind of a miscasting there. I think Avalon's fine in other stuff that he did. He seems, stuff I've seen, he seems like a really good guy. And he had a great career. So I got nothing against Avalon, but I'm not sure he's the guy you want to have in the Jerry Lewis role in a movie. If you're going to do that kind of a duo, you need to really play off their own personal strengths. And I don't know that this movie really does that, but there are some fun bits in it. But what it strikes me as, in the summertime, it's hot out, you've been out doing whatever all day. Maybe you're just by the pool, maybe you've been working. You come in, maybe you shower off, whatever, but you're just like, you're drained. And you sit down on the couch, maybe you got a cold one, cocktail, whatever, white wine, if you're fancy. And sometimes you want to just sort of vegetate to sort of weird light comedy. You're in that mental state where things just get a lot funnier anyways. Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine, perfect for that kind of a thing. But honestly, I've been, razzing this movie a little bit all through, and it kind of deserves it. But there are some funny bits in it, and Vincent Price is absolutely wonderful. He's great, and I'm a big Vincent Price fan. If you are, you might want to check this out. Or if you just, you're half dead and you want to vegetate to something, this is the movie for you. We do get to see Diane one last time at the very end. And that will do it for this review of Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine. Let me know in the comments what you think of this one, or if you want to talk about all the Frankie Avalon, Annette Funicello beach movies, which I'll be honest with you, I do watch them a lot in the summertime. Endless Summer, gotta watch that if I can every year, if I find the time. Summer School is another one we love to put on. But I like to put on at least one of the beach movies. They're goofy. They're not the greatest comedies in the world, but it's a certain vibe and it's a certain time and place that I like to visit, even though it's technically before my time. But let me know in the comments what you think. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe, maybe share with a friend. But until next time, God bless everybody. Please be kind to one another. Have a little bit of fun out there. Watch a little Frankie Avalon or listen to some of his songs. And I will see you again, hopefully soon, in Dad's Den of Pop Culture. Bye-bye.